This is our FOIA training, and we have Ms. Megan Kelly from the City Attorney's Office that's going to lead us through this. First, we are going to do the roll call, so Ms. Tanner, please go ahead.
Hampson?
Here.
Gabriel?
Present.
Well, hold on, I believe she has to go through because Clanton is waiting to.
Yes.
Do roll first and then let him in?
I would recommend doing the roll first because
Okay.
you need a physical quorum to vote on him participating electronically.
Jordan?
Here.
Buffalo?
Here.
And Martin.
Here. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Kelly.
Cut it back on. You cut it off.
All right, Mr. Clanton, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Wonderful. We're going to lay
Can you
the
hear me?
record. Yes, thank you. We're going to lay the record for your appearance by electronic communication means today on the January 25th, 2023 meeting of the Norfolk School Board at the current, you are at a remote location. And what is your current remote location?
Currently, I am on Amtrak train 185, headed southbound to Norfolk from Richmond.
Thank you. And you are not physically present because of a personal matter, is that correct?
Work related.
Work related. And can you state the specific nature of that personal matter?
I just finished 3 days with the Virginia Community Action Partnership, where I serve as Vice President of Organizational Advancement and Workforce Development with STOP Inc. And so I've been meeting with state legislators.
Thank you. Since there is a physical quorum present, would there be a motion for pursuant to Virginia Code 2.23708.3b and the school board's policy on electronic participation from a remote location that school board member Carlos Clanton be allowed to participate in this meeting of the Norfolk School Board through electronic communication means from his remote location specified because he is unable to be physically present at the meeting due to a personal matter and that he's returning from an out-of-town travel for his employer.
I move that Mr. Clinton be allowed to participate per the statutes and regulations just provided to us.
A second.
Thank you.
Is all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, since there's a quorum physically present, Mr. Clanton, welcome to the meeting.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. You can go ahead and proceed.
Good afternoon, Dr. Martin and members of the school board. My name is Margaret Kelly. I am an assistant city attorney who helps the Norfolk Public Schools with their FOIA matters. So FOIA requires that certain public body members receive training within 2 months after assuming local elected office, and then thereafter at least once during each consecutive period of 2 calendar years, commencing with the date on which you last completed a training session for as long as you hold office. So if you've gone through these training before, much of it is going to sound familiar, so thank you for your patience. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. Otherwise, I'll plow right through. And I am a quick talker, so if I'm going too fast, just flag me down and I'm happy to slow down, but I want to keep you on your schedule. The basic intent of FOIA is that the affairs of government are not intended to be conducted in an atmosphere of secrecy, since at all times the public is the beneficiary of any action taken at any level of government. So FOIA will apply to this public body in 2 different ways. One, which is through public records, and another through the meetings of public bodies like we're having today. The intent of this is to give the ready access to public records that are in the custody of public bodies and free entry to meetings of public bodies wherein the business of the people is being conducted. I'm going to address these 2 different provisions of FOIA separately, and to start off with a caveat that because the goal of FOIA is transparency in government, FOIA provisions must always be interpreted liberally and with the starting assumption that public records and public meetings are open for citizens' observation. Therefore, any exceptions or exemptions are to be narrowly construed. So to start off with access to government, the statute provides that the people of the Commonwealth have access to FOIA and that they can bring that they're entitled to the rights that are provided to them under FOIA. This means citizens of the Commonwealth are considered people of the Commonwealth, but it also includes representatives of newspapers and magazines with circulation in the Commonwealth, and representatives of radio and television stations broadcasting in or into the Commonwealth. Again, this idea is just that the public can understand what is happening. So a citizen may not be able to come to a meeting, but the news is going to report on it. It's a harmonious relationship. However, even with this liberal policy, there's some caveats. FOIA is not helpful in that citizens is not defined. The courts have generally looked to a citizen of the Commonwealth for FOIA to mean somebody who's intent to make Virginia their home. Some of the things they look at is whether they can vote, if they own property, do they pay taxes. There's a number of other considerations. However, we're all very aware there are many citizens of Norfolk who may not have the right to vote, who may not be able to own property. So we don't generally get into the weeds about whether or not you are a citizen of Virginia. If you can give us some sort of location in Virginia that you are associated with, we're good with that. We're not going to get into that kind of close magnifying glass look at whether or not you are a citizen. Right, so what is a public body? You as a school board are obviously a public body. It is this long definition up there, which I won't read off to you, but I will point out that it includes committees and subcommittees and task forces and any other entity, however designated, created to perform delegated functions of the public body or to advise the public body. So it's not just you, it would be any committees or subcommittees that are created for that purpose.
And real quick,
Yes.
Tanya, we waited a while, but this is just the second slide, so we're really just getting started.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Right. So we'll start off with going into what a public meeting is. Obviously, it's what we're in right now. It includes work sessions as a body or an entity or an informal assemblage, so something that you sort of come together. The key is that it's as many as 3 members or a quorum for those public bodies where the quorum is less than 3. But for you, it would be 3 members. It can be either physical or electronic. So if you're on a conference call and there's 3 or more members of the school board on there, that is a meeting. And all of these meetings have to follow the notice requirements that I'll talk about later, as well as electronic participation requirements like we had just done earlier in this meeting for Mr. Clanton. That doesn't mean that you can't associate with each other outside in the public. You are able to meet in public for dinner or attend other events together. There is an exception to what it is. It's when it's the any place or function where no part of the purpose of such gathering or attendance is the discussion or transaction of any public business, and such gathering and attendance was not called or prearranged with any purpose of discussing or transacting any business of the public body. It also does not include a public forum, candidate appearance, or debate, the purpose of which is to inform the electorate and not to transact public business or hold discussions relating to the transaction of public business, even though the performance of the members individually or collectively in the conduct of public business may be a topic of discussion or debate at such public meetings. So if you have a question if something is a meeting, before you go, just email my office. We'll be happy to walk that through with you. It also does not include gatherings of the employees of the public body. So Norfolk's public school employees can meet. There is a recognition in FOIA that total transparency in that aspect could lead to a complete standstill of the functioning of the entity itself. So you all are under this requirement for the 3 members or more, but the employees necessarily are not.
Ask a question.
Yes.
3 members of a public body show up at a Civic League meeting.
Yes.
It's not the school board's meeting, it's the Civic League's meeting. That falls into the but not category, is that correct?
As long as you are not participating in the discussion or transaction of public business. There have been findings from some circuit courts that once the public body members start to engage with the group around them and discuss public business, then it becomes a meeting. So you just have to be careful about what it is you are discussing, what it is that you all are saying, and how you are if you are transacting public business at that time.
If one of the 3 of us stands up and gives a report, that's not necessarily where does that fall?
I would advise against it.
Okay.
I would say if there's 3 of you, someone step out of the room. You can maybe take turns. I would always advise against it just because this is a hot button. Usually meetings that have not been properly noticed or closed meetings are something that people will frequently litigate about. So I would just avoid those issues.
Yeah. Well, like a situation, it's a little different than a civic league meeting, but, you've probably heard of like Engage Norfolk, or, we've had like recently like a fair where, elected leaders are invited to come be part of. We're not part of, but we're all there, and we might be engaged by different members of the community in the same room. Is that, but not part of the same conversation? Is that, how could that be construed?
These are all very case-by-case analysis, unfortunately. That's the lawyer talk, and I understand that's a little frustrating. But again, it comes back to the intent, which is if the intent is to be discussing or transacting public business. So as long as you are not, would it be as three or more transacting or conducting public business, then you are fine. So if you've gone to a meeting and someone pulls you aside and there's two other people in the room, but they're over there and they're not involved in the conversation, you're not discussing or transacting public
Okay.
business with three or more people.
Okay, all right.
Right, because this seems different than what we've been hearing before. I was always in my mind after we have this, that we don't want to have three of us in a room together.
That's the safest way, is if you can have three people in a room. If you're if you want to go to one of the basketball games and watch a basketball game, that's fine. You just can't be discussing or transacting public business. There can be three of you there. If you're friends and you want to go out for dinner and talk about your families, that's fine. It's just once anything that is public business related pops up, that's when we caution, stay in pairs.
Just seems different, because I thought that was something we always had in our mind, that if it was going to be three or more, we needed to advertise it, put out information about it going.
Only if you're discussing or transacting public business.
Okay. I must have been asleep during a portion of it last time.
I think it was said, though, what you're remembering is like what she said earlier is just be safe and don't do it, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
of course there are, we've been in a car together, things like that, and that, as long as we're not talking about any business, then it's fine.
Another question that often comes up is emails. The case law is usually far behind in technology, just because of the time periods that it takes to get up to these types of appeals. The basic rule for emails is if they're functioning like a letter, if you are sending one out to a group and people are not acting like it's a chat room and immediately replying back within a quick time period, then it's not a meeting. It is just correspondence outwards. Once it moves into that quick reply chat room type of function, then it becomes more of a meeting. So if you receive an email that is out to everybody, that one is not it is not a meeting, but it's recommended that you just reply directly to that person. You don't CC everybody else. That, again, is a safer way to do it.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, one other point of clarification on the earlier slide where you were referencing task forces or committees of the public body. Is that specific to the school board, or is that Norfolk Public Schools generally? So if we have, like, as a school board, we may create a task force, we may create a advisory committee. The school division, superintendent or others may create different task forces or committees. The understanding of FOIA, does that apply to all, or is that just specific to those task forces or committees that the board physically authorizes?
Yes, if you have delegated a function of the public board to this task force or a committee, then it does become a public body that is under FOIA. If it's been created to specifically advise the public body, then if it's the school board's advisory committee on an issue, then it becomes a public body. There is an attorney general opinion and a FOIA council opinion that indicate if and this was in the example of a locality, if an advisory group is created just to advise the mayor and not the public body, then it's not a public body, it's the mayor's committee. So there's layers, but if they are they've been delegated a function of this public body or they are advising you, then they are a public body as well.
Thank you.
Right, but if we only have two on it, I think that's what
No, no,
usually.
I'm sorry, I wasn't asking about
Maybe
that.
I misunderstood what you were saying, and certainly I would like to have that feedback, because I thought that the reason, we do have committees and stuff, but we always get assigned by twos. So there are only two of us in one of those meetings.
Yes, so if you have, say you have a task force that's been delegated a function of the school board, and you've created this just to do that one task, and you have two members of the school board on that task force and the rest are citizens, the task force itself is a public body. And so any meetings of them would be, including those two school board members, would be a meeting of that task force. If you have three members of the school board, you now have a meeting of both the task committee, the task force, and the school board.
That I understand. That was
Yes.
why I assumed all along that was the reason we only had two assigned to each of the different committees and stuff.
Yes, it's to keep the school board itself from having a meeting
Right.
layered on top of the task force having a meeting.
But just for clarity, I was asking if the board created a committee to advise us on something, and no school board members were participating, it would still be considered a public body of the board because they are advising or operating under the function that we've given them, whether school board
Like our
members
advisory committees.
participate or not.
Yeah.
Or even when we hire, like our people that are in Richmond now.
A lobbyist?
Yeah, right, those groups, would that be the same? Who writes all these
That's a
rules?
service that they're
Bunch
providing.
of lawyers, I bet.
Yes,
Just kidding.
we have to make a living somehow. All right, so the who of meetings, who is allowed in? And this is a pretty simple answer. They're supposed to be open. They're supposed to be free. There is a FOIA council opinion that says you may ask for identification to come in for security purposes as long as the entry remains free. So something like a driver's license, which actually requires money to buy, you can't require they have to show a driver's license, but if they have another form of identification that's free, that's fine as well. And of course, there is an exception to this, which is closed meetings like you will have today. And those are the exemptions, which I'll get into those about closed meetings a little bit later. So this comes back to the notices, which you all seem very familiar with based off of your questions. The meeting notices have to be at least 3 working days prior to the meeting. The school board, you have budget notices, you have other types of notices that may have a longer time requirement that are in your statute. This is what FOIA requires just for this. And Mr. Cloud is very good at helping you with all of those special types of notices that may require more time or be run more frequently. But in general, for FOIA, for a meeting, they have to be posted at least 3 working days prior to the meeting. So if it's a Monday, that's not Friday, that is Friday, Thursday, Wednesday. And then you have to post the notice of the date, time, and location on the official public government website at a prominent location in the office of your clerk or chief administrator. There is an exception for when you have to have this notice requirement. That is if there is a special emergency or continued meeting. Special and emergency meetings are usually very rare. A continued meeting is something, it means a meeting that is continued to address an emergency or to conclude an agenda of a meeting which proper notice has been given. So you do also have that option. And where can these meetings be? They can pretty much be anywhere. They have to just be open to the public, which is the main part of it. They cannot be in a location where recording devices are prohibited because under FOIA you do have to allow recording devices in as long as you can put in rules about whether or not they're being disruptive, where they go, but you can't prohibit them. There's no rules about the size of the meeting rooms. The FOIA Council has advised to keep those meeting rooms so that there's not an appearance that you're intentionally trying to restrict your public access. Obviously, the fire marshal says you're not allowed more than a certain people in the room. You've got to keep the safety of the attendees in mind as well. Right, and so why meetings may be closed. Virginia Code 2.2-3711 has a long list. There's about 50 specific limitations for the purpose a public body may hold a closed meeting. If you have a question about a specific reason that you would like to have a closed meeting, contact the city attorney's office. We'll be happy to look through with it. But even then, again, the goal of FOIA is transparency. So that is why even when you have a closed meeting, You have to come out of the closed meeting and vote on it in an open meeting where the substance of it is reasonably identified. You don't have to give away all the confidentiality and protections of the closed meeting, but the public still needs to have some idea about what's been going on behind closed doors. And Virginia Code 2.23712 sets forth the procedures for how to close a meeting, if anyone is curious. It's bullet pointed out, and you can look through there. But it does have to be taken, there has to be an affirmative recorded vote in an open meeting approving a motion that lists out specific things about the closed meeting. Right, so moving on to public records. You have FOIA officers. The Norfolk Public Schools have FOIA officers. These are the public's point of contact. You're required to have them by statute. And that is the person who understands what FOIA is, will help the public body respond to FOIA requests, knows these time requirements, and can, for these public records requests, can move it all through. FOIA says that the requests come in and it's to the custodian of record of the request. Again, no definition of custodian of record. They're not helpful in that way. But it does not have to be the FOIA officer. It can be generally somebody in the public body or the school, as long as they would be considered the custodian of record. So we always recommend if you receive a FOIA request, you send it on to your FOIA officers, let them handle the nitty-gritty, calendaring, responding. They're very good at what they do, and they're more than happy to help. I have an email contact for them at the end of this presentation as well, so it'll be in your slides. What is a record? Pretty much anything. I won't take your time reading this all off. Just if it exists, it's probably a record. It can include social media if you've been using social media in the transaction of public business. If you have a Facebook page and it is your public business where people can come, comment, ask questions, that becomes a public record as well. One of the requirements of FOIA is that the record must actually exist. You're not required to create a record in response to a records request. However, if it is something like they're asking for a total number and we have a quick Excel sheet that we can just add up, the public body and the requester can come to an agreement on just abstracting or summarizing the information. Right, so for social media, for your text messages, for your emails, if you are engaging in transacting or discussing public business while you are using any of these platforms, as I said, assume that they are a public record. You also run into some First Amendment issues that is also being dealt with. I'm sure everyone remembers from a few years back the president and Twitter, and it turns into, can you block people, can you not? It is an ever-evolving landscape. So the recommendation is just don't delete things. If somebody is, being harassing or swearing on your Facebook page or anything like that, please contact our office and we can do the work through to figure out what you can do in those kinds of situations. But on your own, just default to don't delete things, and that makes it much simpler in the future. And so when do you have to respond? When do we have to respond to records? The public body has to give a written response within 5 working days of the receipt of the request, and we can either say that they're being provided in full, they're being withheld, they are provided in part, and either withheld or redacted in part, or we just can't find them and they don't exist. There is an option because FOIA understands it is created by the General Assembly, which is also a public body. They understand that there's other things. They've got work to do. You can't just come to a standstill and respond to FOIA requests. So within 5 working days, if for some reason it's not possible to respond, you can send the FOIA officers can send a written response to the requester, say we need an additional 7 working days for this reason, and they get the additional 7 working days to do that. They can also, if the records are likely to exceed $200 in the actual time and response costs, then we can require the deposit be paid before the actual search and production goes into effect. If the records can't be identified, FOIA does require that a records request identify with reasonable specificity what document the person is looking for. If we can't figure it out, then the clock does not start until everyone can figure out what it is. Or if the requester owes an outstanding balance from previous requests that remain unpaid for 30 days or more after billing, then you don't have to respond. So what does get redacted? There are some exemptions. As I said earlier, they need to be narrowly construed. And so the records may be withheld because they are exempt from FOIA, or the information within the record needs to be redacted if the rest of it is not exempt. And if the exemption does apply, we have to say how much is being withheld or redacted, and we have to specify the citation to where in the code this exemption exists. We can't just make up an exemption. It actually has to exist on there. And so where are all these exemptions? They're all under the Virginia Code. Under FOIA, they're fun to read if you're somebody like me and deals with this on a daily basis, but I'll go through the main ones that apply to you. So they are under 2.2-3705.1. Subsection 1 is personnel. So you may have some emails or correspondence that deal with a specific identifiable personnel individual. There's additional exemptions throughout FOIA, such as the exemptions for scholastic records or health or social services records. But FOIA is not just limited to FOIA. The FOIA code does acknowledge that there are these other laws out there. FERPA is a big one for all of you. FERPA does control who can get access to certain records. HIPAA, social security numbers, tax information, social services has its own separate chapter of the code. Juvenile records, even your Public Procurement Act has some exemptions from FOIA. There's a lot of them. So if you have a question about if an exemption applies, just feel free to reach out to your FOIA officer or to our office, and we'd be happy to walk you through that. If you're ever curious and you want to do some research, the FOIA Council has an online database of their opinions where they've walked through. If you have some free time and you love FOIA, you're welcome to go there, but you don't have to. And how to request records. This is the big issue. A FOIA request does not have to be in writing. It can be as simple as somebody calling up the public schools and saying, I want a copy of this. So ideally, they're supposed to locate the FOIA officer and communicate that way and send a request with their name, their legal address, and the record requested. That does not always happen. So that is why you have FOIA officers to help work with these people. If you, as school board members, get a request for a record, if it's a request for a document, even if it's just a request for information and you don't know if this is just somebody asking a question or if it's a FOIA request, send it on to your FOIA at nps.k12.va.us. That is the FOIA inbox that your FOIA officers will be checking, and they will be happy to work through with it and take the lead. So just let them know if it's a verbal one. Please provide them as much information as you can, the requester's name, contact info, what from the request you actually were told that they want, and the date that you received that request, so they can process it through there. But just send it on to them and they will take it from there and work out the nitty-gritties of what needs to be provided, what the dates are, what responses need to be given. So there is a method for enforcement of FOIA rights for citizens. If they feel like their rights have not been respected, they can file a petition for a writ of mandamus or injunction in either the General District Court or the Circuit Court. If they notify the school board or the public body in advance of filing, it has to be heard within 7 days of the date the petition was made. And this is really a concern for especially meetings, if meetings are being closed or open. But it's also to make sure that records aren't being destroyed, records aren't going missing. And the burden of proof rests with the public body in that case to say why they did what they did or did not do what they did. And this is the big part of it, which is that penalties and awards can be against the employee, against an employee or an officer. It doesn't necessarily have to be against the public body itself. So that's why we caution you to just always, for your own sakes, err on the side of caution. There could be a civil penalty required to be paid for the literary fund, if the petitioner substantially prevails, they're also entitled to recover their reasonable costs for bringing it. So at the end, the recent Virginia FOIA updates are, as we did at the beginning of this meeting, you can now have electronic communication means during a non-state of emergency. So FOIA also deals with that in its meeting requirements. And you have, in addition to the prior reasons you could, which is for disability or medical condition, a family member's medical condition or a personal matter. Now there's a new one which says the member's principal residence is more than 60 miles from the meeting location identified in the required notice for such meeting. So if you decide to go out to Wintergreen and somebody can't make it, that's a way. I think that's more intended for the General Assembly up in Richmond where people are coming from wherever. But that is an option. And something that was actually interesting that was added to the scholastic records for FOIA. The definition of scholastic records has not changed. It still means those records containing information directly related to a student or an applicant for admission and maintained by a public body that is an educational agency or institution or by a person acting for the agency or institution. But they put in a provision now that says, except with regard to scholastic records requested pursuant to FOIA, that must be made available for inspection pursuant to FERPA, and such request for scholastic records by a parent or legal guardian of a minor student or a student who is 18 years of older. Except for that, the public body may make reasonable charges not to exceed the actual cost in providing the records. So now they've carved out this recognition that if FERPA would require you to provide the records, you can't be charging for what FERPA would require you to provide. So that was, I thought, an interesting change that happened this year. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any further questions?
Just one. I was on the FOIA Council's webinar training last week, and one of the issues that came up was dealing with public bodies in closed session on exempt matters, and then polling doing a poll of where we stood on a matter. And I understood the recommendation was if we did that, we should then, in the public session, ratify that we took that action, even though we didn't necessarily have to identify anything specific to, let's say we're dealing with some lawsuit, and we were discussing the particulars of the lawsuit, and we were polled about what direction we wanted to take, that we would come out of closed session and ratify that direction in a public vote, even though we wouldn't disclose the details of that lawsuit, because it would have allowed for it, because it falls under the exempt.
So separate from the motion for a closed session,
Right.
to allow the public to know who voted yes or no on
Right.
what was discussed in the closed session?
Right.
I'm actually not sure, but I'm happy to look into
Okay.
that.
All right, thank you.
It's a great question. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Kelly. I
Thank you.
appreciate your guidance on this, and
Thank you for your patience.
yeah.
So we have 2 years before we have another one of these, although it was fabulous.
Yes, it was.
Had my attention on the edge of my seat.
Yes.
But once every 2 years, right?
2 calendar years, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our closed session. Dr. Birdsong.
Well,
Well, y'all are getting-
I move that
Yeah, would you mind? Thank you.
are you accepting the motion to go into closed session now, or?
Yeah. Let's wait for Dr. Birdsong to come in, so we have everyone here.
Shouldn't have to vote on it, so.
What's that? No, I mean, I just want everyone to.
And I apologize for
No problem.
late.
Is it a school visit?
Little Creek.
Oh, I did see that, but I didn't see. And then I'll put it in the folder, because that's how I had this.
Yeah, he's on the train.
I just sent it this week, but I'll send it
Oh,
again.
goodness, I haven't got to it yet, because I've been working my way down.
They come pick up his
Anya.
microphone.
If I get a break, I'll take
If you don't,
it.
if not,
But we haven't made a
I'll
motion.
send it.
Yeah, we need to.
How are you? Good.
Hi, Dr.
Hello.
Birdsong. How are you doing?
I'm great. Hunky dory.
Ready to do the motion now.
All right. Hunky dory.
Great. She's right here, so we'll go ahead and get started. Ms. Tanner, can you, oh wait, I'm sorry. Could I get a motion to go into closed session, please?
I move that we go into closed session.
Thank you. And
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Jordan. Ms. Tanner, please read the motion to go into closed session.
Move that the members of the school board go into a closed session for the purposes which are set out in subsection A of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended for discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the school board of the city of Norfolk pursuant to subsection 2.2-3711A1 of the Act. The subjects of this portion of the session are the personnel on today's regular personnel agenda and additional personnel in connection with an ongoing human resources investigation. B, discussion or consideration of disciplinary and any other matters concerning students in Norfolk Public Schools that would involve the disclosure of information contained in a scholastic record pursuant to subsection 2.2-3711A2 of the Act. The subject of this portion of the session is discussion of specific students on today's regular student support agenda. And C, consultation with legal counsel and briefing by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where discussion in open session would adversely affect the school board's negotiating or litigating posture, and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice, by counsel pursuant to subsections 2.2-3711A7 and 8 of the Act. The subjects of this portion of the session are those set out above in subsections A and B of this motion to the extent consultation with legal counsel is needed. Basine.
Aye.
Campson.
Aye.
Gabriel.
Aye.
Clanton. Okay, he said aye. Okay, Jordan.
Aye.
Aye.
Buffalo.
Aye.
And Martin.
Aye. Thank
And
you.
we just need a moment to allow Channel 47 to take the
Yeah.
microphones out. Basine.
Here.
Campson. Gabriel.
Present.
Clanton.
Present.
Jordan.
Here.
Buffalo.
Here.
And Martin.
Present. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by our student representative, Naya Muir.
We also request that all cell phones and pagers be turned off or to vibrate. May be seated.
Can I get a motion to adopt the business agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Gleason. Any discussion?
Dr. Martin, I'd like to ask that the business meeting agenda be amended to add under item 6.03, to add the HR reports that were emailed to us Friday evening to be included for a brief discussion.
For a discussion
Under discussion,
as a recommendation.
yes, as a recommendation to be included for the work session agenda.
No, I'll second it if you need a second.
Okay, second.
They require a vote. There are reports for information. I'm just, while we are, this is the first time we're hearing that we were even gonna amend this and add this. I'm just gonna vote no, but, I mean, we can, whatever the will of the board is.
Just to be clear, what she's asking is that it's placed on this agenda as item 6.03, not for discussion on the topic, but for, as a recommendation to add it to our work session agenda at our February 1st.
Is it for the February 1st agenda?
Yes,
Okay, so this isn't today, but for February 1st?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Dr.
that
Martin?
would be a,
may I clarify the motion as the maker of the motion? So, Mr. Clanton, just to clarify, so I sent an email on Monday evening to add this item to the agenda because I wanted to have a brief discussion because, as you know, over the last several months, I've asked to have a discussion. It may already be planned to be a discussion topic for February 1st. I'm not aware exactly, based on the draft agenda, whether it is a topic for February 1st. So that's why I'm requesting to have it as a agenda item versus having Dr. Martin just add it as an agenda item without the full board knowledge and approval. So I'm not asking the administration to provide any data or additional information other than what was already provided, but I'm asking for a board discussion on when we can ask the administration to bring us a report so that we can direct the administration for when we want to have discussion. Does that make sense?
So are you,
Yeah.
just for clarity, so you're asking us to place it on this agenda here today so that we can vote on for a future item?
Yes.
Okay.
Seeing no other place to do it. And as you know, because there has been no other place to do it, I've pulled the personnel docket, and I don't want to do that. So I'm asking for a place to do that.
I appreciate the clarification. I do believe that there still is a process. We have agenda planning, and I understand you would like to have a full, support of the board behind it. So, I won't object. I'll vote in favor of it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Oh,
Go ahead.
we're voting on the.
We're voting on whether or not to add 6.01, unless there's any other.
There's no
amendments.
objection. So we're voting on
.03.
Or 6.03. Are there any other amendments? Okay, to add 6.03 to the agenda and to approve the agenda with the amendment is what it is.
Okay, you ready? Okay. Basine?
Aye.
Campson? Aye. Gabriel?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Buffalo?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay. So item 6.03 will be added. All right, thank you. Up next, we have our student culinary presentation by Maury High School culinary students. Teacher is Jeff Gaynor, and the students, Nadia Johnson, and what was the other?
Just 1 second. Chairwoman,
Okay.
board members, Superintendent Dr. Birdsong, MPS staff, and attendees, the school board had the opportunity to enjoy a delicious dinner tonight. Compliments of the Maury High School culinary students with family and consumer services teacher, also known as Chef Irvin Gaynor, and representing the culinary students is Nadia Johnson and Kylie Burgo. Okay, you told me just one was coming, so I'm glad you came too today. As they like to share a little bit of details about their meal tonight, and I want to be able to show the individuals who were not here how delicious that dinner looks. So while you speak, Chef Gaynor, I will pull up your visuals.
Hello, as she said, I'm Chef Gaynor, one of 2 instructors at Maury High School. Tonight, our culinary 2 students prepared a chicken and sausage gumbo with rice, a garden salad, cornbread, and bread pudding. At Maury High School, we run a Pro Start program that's a national program, which it's an industry-driven program that provides real-life experiences and opportunities and build practical skills and foundations that will last a lifetime for our students. Pro Start gives students a platform to discover new interests and talents to open doors for fulfilling their careers. The program includes facets of the industry and sets a high standard of excellence for the students and the industry. The students take takes culinary at the home school and at the Norfolk Technical Center, which also offers dual enrollment. The students enrolled at Maury Culinary Tour program have had the opportunities to cater several events. The medical science program and a few of the ROTC programs, just to name a few. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nadia Johnson. I am a senior at Maury High School, class of 2023, and currently a cheer captain for the cheerleading squad. This will be my third year in culinary. When I first started Intro to Culinary, it was all fun and wonderful. However, it was during COVID and all the classes were via Zoom, hence I didn't get a chance to eat. When it was time to sign up for the courses for the following year, I signed up again hoping to experience the fun in the food that I missed the previous year. During this time is when I took a real interest into culinary. I learned that culinary was more than cooking. It was reading, math, science, and art all combined. I had an opportunity to learn about and how to cook a variety of foods, how to operate various pieces of equipment, go to culinary boot camp, help cater events, and of course learn about foodborne illness and ways to prevent it. After I graduate, I plan to attend Johnson's & Well, where I can pursue a degree in culinary arts with an emphasis on baking and pastry and business management, which hopes to start my own business one day.
Anyone want to give any feedback on how dinner was tonight? Go ahead.
I will say it was excellent. And I said I was only going to eat one bite of the bread pudding, not because it wasn't delicious, but just because I'm trying to watch the calories, and it was gone. So I failed at that, but it was delicious. So thank you so much for the food. It was delicious. I'll say it again. But
Yeah, it was extremely tasty. I could tell that a lot of time went into the gumbo, your spices, everything was cooked very well. The salad, chopped excellent. I'm a foodie myself, so I pay a lot of attention to things like that. The presentation, it was just very, very delicious. So thank you all for doing this. It was quite a treat for us.
Yes, thank you for the meal, helping me to get acclimated to my first business meeting. So if you see me nodding off, you know why. Okay, thank you so much.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay, Dr. Birdsall.
And as a Carolina girl, the bread pudding was outstanding. I know what good bread pudding tastes like, and it was absolutely delicious. It was divine. So thank you. Keep up the good work.
Very impressive. Thank you. Ms. Tanner?
Yes. Everyone, just take a moment and peer around the room. I say this every business meeting because we have phenomenal artwork by our talented students. And today you're looking at artwork from Norview High School, Larchmont, Coleman Place, Larry Moore, Sherwood Forest, Bayview, and Richard Boland Elementary Schools. And we have a rotation every year of the artwork. So let's give our students, if they're watching, a round of applause. Thank you all again. And then also the observance for January is National Mentoring Month that focuses on the need for mentors to raise awareness of mentoring, recruit individuals or organizations to be mentors here in Norfolk Public Schools. So this concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. And up next, we have the superintendent's report from Dr. Sharon Birdsall, our wonderful superintendent.
Chair Martin, Vice Chair Buffalo, members of the board, and members of our community. Each month we have the wonderful opportunity to showcase our brilliant students and all that our teachers do for our kids every day. And so you will watch a presentation of what is going on in Norfolk Public Schools to include a very exciting graduation. We had the IB graduation from students that came back. They actually have gone off to college. They came back to participate in the IB ceremony. So let's roll the video.
Students and their parents experience science, technology, engineering, arts, and math firsthand during Larchmont Elementary's STEAM Family Night. A variety of activities, including a wind tunnel, robotics, coding, and even a vehicle display from ODU Motorsports, were on site for attendees to enjoy.
So it's a great time. Everyone seems to love them. So we love getting people a chance to sit in them, give them a chance to appreciate what we love doing. So everyone wants to know how fast they go, of course. Everyone wants to see how well they fit.
This well-attended event gave students the opportunity to learn more about STEM with their parents in an unstructured, hands-on environment.
I feel like STEM is a 21st century skill. It's something that all kids should be learning now. So to have a fun night where parents and kids can come and interact with STEM together is the perfect opportunity.
I think it's a great opportunity for the kids to participate in these experiments like code making and elephant toothpaste. And it also gives the kids that have time out of the house to have fun and be in their school and do different things that they normally don't do on a regular school day.
I mean, we haven't even made it out of this room, and we've been here for almost an hour. So we're getting there, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's very hands-on, which allows me to help and have fun doing the things with them.
I think it's fantastic. I think the kids are learning, it's hands-on, they're experiencing new things. STEAM exercises are, applicable to their lives, and I can't wait to see what they do with their lives, and hopefully it's with science and technology.
Berkeley Campostella Early Childhood Center was recognized as an Apple Distinguished School for the third time during a special ceremony. Excited pre-K students and staff celebrated the achievement with Lake Taylor High School's cheerleaders and drumline, and all were in attendance when the school received the award from an Apple representative.
It feels great. It feels great to receive the award. The teachers and students have worked so hard implementing technology into the classroom every day, and they just love it. And I am so excited and honored to be able to showcase their work so that we were able to receive this award again.
As one of 4 early childhood centers in the world to receive this honor, the school is committed to integrating technology into everyday classroom learning.
This is a very awesome tool to have in our classroom. Kids are beginning to learn coding and just continue to enhance the things that we're teaching them in the classroom. So this Apple iPad is an awesome tool to have. I wish everybody could have it.
International Baccalaureate students from the class of 2022 returned to Granby High School during their winter break to receive their IB diplomas. After formal greetings and a brief message from a fellow classmate, the diplomas were handed out to the graduates in front of family, friends, and current IB students.
I think in one way, getting the piece of paper is not as significant to them as coming in and seeing the building again and having all the memories and seeing their friends and their teachers. I think that social aspect of it is really important, but it is nice to honor them. They do not get their IB results until July after they've graduated, so it's nice for us to be able to celebrate them.
It was honestly surreal when I walked in the front door. I saw some of my old classmates walking in with me, and it was good to catch up with them and saying hi and see what's going on in their lives after we parted ways since graduation. The culmination of my hard work, that's what it means to me. And it has all of the subjects I took and the essays I wrote in here with a score, and that shows to me that I did a good job.
Seniors in the Medical and Health Specialties program at Maury High School were reminded of just how close they are to graduation during their white shirt ceremony. This unique event, which is modeled after the white coat ceremony in medical school, gave these students the opportunity to have their names read as they walked across the stage. They also recited their own student Hippocratic Oath, heard from a recent graduate of the program, and were recognized in front of family and friends for all of their hard work.
I don't think you guys could tell, but there was a moment there I felt a little choked up when I was talking about the community service hours. They're just a really impressive group of kids. I was not at their level at their age, and it's wonderful to give them this award. You can tell they're very appreciative, and to have our keynote speaker back, it's pretty crazy just to see where they go.
It makes me feel accomplished because like when I first joined the medical program here, I didn't know if I was going to be able to be as good as everyone else in the program. But after going through the 4 years, I turned out it's not as terrible as I thought it would be. So I'm happy about that.
I was very surprised. I was not expecting to receive the Spirit of the Oath Award, and I'm very happy because this program is a program that has brought me so much joy. It's a great ceremony. We also have a graduation ceremony, but it just helps us recognize that this is where we are, this is where we're going, and we have many great things up ahead in front of us.
Volunteers from Norfolk Public Schools Department of Early Learning and Title I, Scholastic Books, and the Salvation Army spent a chilly morning handing out books to parents of our Title I students at Military Circle. These books for all age groups were a donation from Scholastic, and they were distributed during a special event in collaboration with the Salvation Army.
We are so excited to be here this morning. We are doing the Toys for Tots book distribution. Norfolk Public Schools was chosen as their grantee for the books, so we are partnering with the Salvation Army Angel Tree today to hand out books to all of our children. I am so excited to share that we're going to give out over 4,000 books today to our families. And it's going to be just a phenomenal time of year because we're going to go on winter break and all of our kids are going to have books to read.
The International Longshoremen's Association Port of Hampton Roads, in partnership with the Hampton Roads Shipping Association and Port of Virginia, donated over 150 bikes to NPS elementary schools as part of the 9th annual Make a Kid Smile for Christmas bike drive. Each student was able to pick out a bike of their choice, along with a helmet, to bring home for the holidays.
It's a privilege to be able to give back because, like I stated once before, you know, a man that gives back to a child is a man. A man do not have a child is a child. I'd like to thank everybody, all the men and women of International Longshoremen Association for a great job with the 9th year of the Make a Kid Smile for Christmas bike drive.
At the start of the holiday break, families at Little Creek Elementary picked up gifts for students from the school's Angel Tree. Thanks to BJ's Wholesale, there were gifts for every student whose name was on the tree this year.
Our school was blessed by BJ's Wholesale. They donated $2,800 for us to purchase gifts for every student that was on our list of need this year. So we were able to go to their store and shop for every kid that was on the Christmas tree. It is so wonderful to have a corporate partner that's just as excited to serve our community as we are. We just love to get out and help people in our community, and this is just a wonderful way to be able to do that through their support.
Thank you. A lot of exciting things going on in our schools. Okay, up next we have citizens' comment on agenda items only.
And before I say that, Dr. Martin, congratulations to Naya Mirror. I think I saw you in the video with the white shirt ceremony.
Yes,
Congratulations to you. Your very own. Today's Chairman Martin, we have two speakers for citizens' comments on agenda items. Today's speakers have signed up for public comments before the start of today's business meeting. If you would like to provide public comments for agenda items only, you are required to state the agenda items you are addressing prior to providing your public comments at this meeting. When your name is called, please come forward to the speaker's podium, state your name and whether you have a child in Norfolk Public Schools, or if you are employed by the district, and state your agenda item or items. One person is to speak at a time. If you are representing a group, state the group's name. You may ask your group members to stand in place to be recognized. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes. A timer is set with an alarm that will signify the end of your speaking time. State your position and give facts and other relevant data. Avoid saying anything that identifies students or personnel information about individual employees. Personnel, disciplinary, and confidential matters may be addressed to the school board directly via email at schoolboard@npsk12.com. Comments should be addressed to the board and not addressed to an individual member. School board members do not respond to public comments at the time they are given. Any written statements or supporting materials should be given to the clerk. And our first speaker for tonight is Rakita Robinson, followed by Natalie Ferreira.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay. Yes. Such a change, so I don't know what to say.
Can you restart the clock, Ms. Tanner? Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. My name is Rakita Robinson. I'm a first grade teacher at Richard Bowling Elementary School, and I'm here to express my concern about what's happening at Richard Bowling Elementary School. It's that time of year when classroom instructors and school staff members are being surveyed to help schools create and maintain safe and supportive working environments for professionals. The results will be shared with the administration and stakeholders, but the testimonials will not be known unless attention is brought to those in position to do something about it. So once again, teachers want you to know, we are not free to be creative in our teaching approaches. We do not control how our class time to meet the standards. Our role as educators is not respected. We are spending an unreasonable amount of time per week grading papers, rewriting planning documents, collecting data, and creating ways to present remediation when the curriculum fails to reach our students. My letter of concern focuses on technology and the disrespect shown to teachers. I've been in communication with my technology support staff that serves my school about the lack of technology or a laptop. The school issued teacher laptop. Mine was damaged due to moisture back in November 10th, 2022, when I was classroom cleaning, because that's also become my teaching job. I followed district protocols, and because of this cleaning damage, the laptop became beyond repair, and my principal has informed me that I will not be issued a new one. But I can't get that in writing. That's a whole other issue. If our district does not have adequate funds or the supply, I've offered to buy a new computer, but I've been told that I will not have access to school internal communications and programs. So I've been working closely with technology, and they were surprised to see so many other deficits which impede having a successful learning environment in my classroom. I received a letter of concern on January 23rd. The purpose of the letter was concerning me not uploading into the computer, into the program, my lesson plans, which I can't do because I don't have a laptop. I don't have access to it. I'm also, I think my biggest concern is I came here to speak to you all about a flag one time. And that has been used as a source of retaliation for me. I was in a meeting with my staff members when an administrator said to me, there's veterans driving around Norfolk looking for schools for flags, and that I caused this. If my character continues to be misrepresented by administration, I think we have a bigger problem here. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Natalie Ferreira.
Good evening. Good evening, school board members. My name is Natalie Ferrara, and I am a teacher at Norview High School and a member of the Norfolk Federation of Teachers. I am before you this evening in reference to safety and security in our schools. As almost every other school is experiencing, Norview has seen a dramatic uptick in student misbehavior. Step inside our building and you would undoubtedly be greeted by the lingering smell of marijuana on every floor. This is due in large part to our building's inability to staff security officers. Until a week ago, Norview had one security guard and one student resource officer for over 2,000 students. If the habitual, almost acceptable drug use was not enough to make you question where you were, your next experience might involve one of the 3 to 4 plus fights occurring daily in our building. Over the course of 2 consecutive school days, over 7 fights took place in Norview. One of these fights happened to take place in the hallway adjacent to my classroom. It took over 7 minutes before a single security officer or administrator arrived to break up the altercation. This is because at the very same time, a full-on brawl was taking place in our school's main office, which would eventually require 6 faculty members to physically intervene and break up. As a result of the ongoing spiraling violence in our building, several emails were sent by Norview faculty and staff to various individuals in central administration, as well as members of this board, After 5 months of drugs, fights, and lessening security, faculty members no longer feel safe coming to work. As Norview's District Teacher Forum representative, and simply as an employee of Norfolk Public Schools, I was one of the many faculty members to send an email to voice my concerns. The result? Gaslighting and harassment. In the days following our emails, the faculty of Norview was subjected to an emergency faculty meeting in which we were indirectly admonished for taking our concerns outside of the building. Many staff members were informed of comments made on behalf of an executive director that our emails regarding safety and security were disrespectful and ignoring the chain of command. Faculty forum meetings were held in which emails that were sent were used to facilitate strategies on what we, the faculty and staff, can do to resolve our building's issues. For me personally, on Monday, a human resources investigator pulled me out of my classroom and took me away from instructional time with my students in order to interrogate me without any notice, informing me he had been sent directly by an executive director to force me into identifying who disclosed their comments to me. My attempt to raise the alarm regarding safety and security in my building was met the same way Norfolk meets every single other issue, with deference, defiance, and ignorance. Common sense measures can and need to be implemented. Dogs are used at ADL, why can't they be brought into Norview? Newport News was able to reappropriate $2 million overnight to install metal detectors, why can't Norfolk? Failing to acknowledge that there is a problem is exactly why students believe that at 6 years old, they can shoot their teachers.
Our speakers for this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. Okay, up next, I'd like to get a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Madam Chairman, I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
You, Dr. Gabriel, can I get a second?
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Buffalo. Any discussion on the consent agenda adoption? All right, thank you. Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Basine?
Aye.
Hampson?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Buffalo?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay, it passes. Okay, up next, we have our monthly financial report. Mr. Jenkins, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Chairwoman Martin, Vice Chair Buffalo, Dr. Birdsong, members of the board. This evening, we'll review the financial report for the month of December. And I see that's on the screen, okay. The December report covers 6 months for the fiscal year that started July 1st. As with prior reports, this reflects activity recorded through January 17th. General fund collections, that is the revenue that came in during the first 6 months, totaled $166.6 million. That is 43.5% of our $383 million budget. Collections during the same period in the 2 previous years range between 37% and 43%. On page 3 of the highlights, we provide a graph of revenue and spending for the current fiscal year. As of the end of December, we had spent or encumbered $156.9 million, or 41% of our budget. Revenue again was $166.6 million. During the previous 2 years, spending at this point in time ranged between 41% and 42%. So spending is similar with that of the previous years. Turning to page 4, there are 2 graphs. One is for revenue, the other is for spending. The graphs represent the monthly revenue and spending for the current and 2 previous years, and the trend is in the green background. Revenue collections have been above the trend for most of the year. Spending in December exceeded the trend in part because of the mid-month bonus last month. More detailed information is available starting on page 5. We had no budget transfers this month that exceeded $50,000. The quarterly update on the categorical grants appears on page 16, or starting on page 16. As of December 30, there were $298 million of grants in progress. We had spent or issued contracts on a 56% of the total award, leaving 44% available. All funds were spent from the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security, or CARES, grant before the December 31st deadline. We also spent a large portion of our award for the Coronavirus Relief and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act, or also known as ESSER 2. Congress approved that act in December of 2020. At the end of this December 22, we had spent or uncovered 78% of the $51 million. The remainder is available through September of 23, so September of this year. We also received nearly $120 million of grants from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, also ESSER 3, that was approved by Congress in March of 21. Most of these funds are available through September of 2024, although a couple expire earlier. As of the end of December, we spent or issued contracts for $28 million, or 23% of the ARPA awards. We continue to spend out of ESSER 2 and ARPA in accordance with plans adopted or approved by the Virginia Department of Education. Finally, on a separate report, you'll find the gifts and donations that we received between October and December 31st. During the last quarter, we received $82,000 of grants from nearly 24 donors. Most gifts were for the purchase of instructional materials for schools. However, we received $20,000 from 2 vendors in support of the Teacher of the Year banquet and the Summer Leadership Institute. Further details is available on the report. Chairwoman Martin, that concludes my comments. If you have any questions, I will be glad to try to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
The gifts to the schools, do these funds stay at the school and they report out to central office, or do they allocate
most of those gifts remain. They were gifts specifically to a school and often to a teacher. So they would stay at the school. There were a couple of gifts that were to the division, so they're handled centrally, and I spoke of those.
Other questions?
Dr. Martin, sorry. Mr. Jenkins, will we have an opportunity to talk more about the ESSER funds next week when we talk about the budget, or is this an opportunity to ask a few questions?
Be glad to try to answer your questions. I believe next period we are focused on the general fund, or the operating fund.
budget.
So there won't be a lot on ESSER, but there would be some.
Okay. Well, so I know we had a survey out where we're receiving feedback on the ESSER funds, correct? On the use of the ESSER funds.
I believe there was a survey.
There was a survey that was out, and I was just wondering how that feedback was then used, and if I know there were some changes in terms of allocations based on needs and based on our data, and how, if you could kind of share a little bit about.
It's something I'm not prepared to speak about.
I was just looking here.
Not involved in
and
this
that
survey.
might be part or align with what we're going to talk about next week. I don't know if.
Survey results yet.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I'm I guess trying to ask. Yes.
That would be the next scheduled time, other than any other time.
Okay, well, I guess that's when.
I don't have information on the survey. I don't know if others do, but I do not.
Okay.
I'm taking note of it, though, for our next agenda.
Okay, because when is the survey closing?
Already closed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, so because this is one report out now, right?
So we were not prepared to discuss,
Okay, well, I'm
anything
just trying to get some
that.
clarification.
We don't have a problem doing that, but we weren't prepared for that as an agenda item tonight.
Okay,
So
all
if
right.
we had known ahead of time, we could have been a little bit better prepared.
I just covered the financial part of it, so I don't have the
Just the
survey
finan-
results.
okay.
Apologize.
Okay, I just wanted to know how that was
We'll
impacting the
set a time to
financial
get it.
part of it.
We'll
If-
set a time to get the report out on the survey, though.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, just to that point, I would like for us to see if we can't include discussion of the allocations that were submitted to the state
Well,
as part of our financial discussion next week.
Well, and Dr. Martin, and to that point, I guess that's what I'm trying to get a better understanding of. Were the findings from the survey then used to inform the allocations that were sent to the state? So that's what does that make sense to you? Like,
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to
You were
understand.
talking about the surveys. I just wanted to make sure that the board has an opportunity
Right.
to receive a presentation on
Right.
how the allocations have been determined and how it will
That's a good way
impact
to put it.
student outcomes.
Yes, that's a better way to put it. Thank you.
I don't have an answer for you right now on a date of when we're going to.
No, I'm just letting you know.
I'm taking note of it.
All right.
Any other questions for Mr. Jenkins? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the financial report as presented?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the monthly financial report subject to audit.
Thank you. All right, and thank you for seconding it, Ms. Campson. Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Basine?
Aye.
Campson? Gabriel?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Buffalo?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay, thank you, everyone. Now we have item 6.02, the governor's proposed budget update. Also by Mr. Jenkins, so go ahead whenever you're ready.
Certainly, Ms. Tanner's pulling that up on the screen now. There's a presentation I'll review with you. Thank you. So now we'll talk about the state budget. Just before winter, the winter holidays, Governor Youngkin recommended several amendments to the current biennial budget. While the state budget covers a wide variety of services across the state, this report will focus on the impact on Norfolk schools. I'll also review the timeline, the city's revenue allocation policy and our budget timeline. The Commonwealth budget, the biennial budget process starts in December when Governor Youngkin released proposed amendments to the budget. The Assembly, as most of you are very, very well aware of, is a biennial budget. Last year, the budget for the 2 years was adopted. Every year, in the alternate year, or I guess this is an odd number a year, the governor recommends amendments, and that's what occurred this time. In January, the Assembly will review the amendments in what is generally a short session, although they always declare another 15 days, so it's about the same as a regular session. There are two houses, the Senate the budget is done, the budget work is done by the Senate Finance Committee, and then there's a House Appropriations Committee that works with the budget on the House side. In February, we expect each House to vote on a budget proposal or amendments to the budget. And I can just about assure you that the two budgets in two different houses will be different. It will then go to a conference committee, which contains delegates or senators from each of the two houses. Their job is to come up with a conference vote, a conference bill, which can be voted upon by both houses during the month of March. If all goes well, they will do that. So we'll have a budget that goes to the governor, and he will sometime in April either sign indicating approval, or he may revise or veto specific items in the budget. If that happens, there would be an override session. So the budget goes into overtime. And nobody knows what happens after that. But by June 30th, typically everything is well done. So, what is in Governor Youngkin's amendments is well, this is the entire thing. The revisions were based on improved economic outlook in the state. So the state is getting more revenue in, so they have more money that's available to spend. The governor identified $3.6 million of resources that's available above the biennial budget. Some of that came from revenue growth, some of which is inflation-driven. As inflation increases prices, things like sales taxes rise, as wages rise, taxes on income rises, so the state's taking in more money. But there are also, I guess, releases of reserves and also expired appropriations. So money left in fiscal 22's budget and before. So those funds are now available. The amount that's there is greater than the reserves that the state, their state targets would retain. So the governor recommends $2.5 billion in increased spending. He didn't really cut anything, so the current budget stays the same, so it's pretty much just adding things to it. For education or K-12 funding, there's an increase of $275 million. It doesn't all come to us, we just get a portion. And then the other part are reductions in personal and corporate income taxes. The corporate taxes was recommended to go down from 6% to 5%, and then there were changes in personal deductions for individuals. So about $1 billion in tax cuts and $2.5 billion in increased spending over the coming year. As it pertained, well, this is again, okay, these are the revisions for K-12, excuse me, I'm sorry. There is growth in sales taxes, so the sales taxes that are available for distribution to schools goes up by $168 million. And if you look at this, you'll see this totals more than $275. When the sales tax goes up, then other state payments go down. State basic payment aid payments go down as the sales tax goes up, because the two are, the sales tax is part of the basic aid formula. We do get some increased funds, though. There's also $50 million set aside for the governor's lab school project. This is in addition to what the General Assembly approved last year. $50 million to be distributed for bonuses to top performing teachers. We're not really sure what that means or how much each district gets. So that's to be worked out by the Department of Education. There is a $45 million provision for retention bonuses, and as we understand it, employees who return from fiscal 23 into fiscal 24, the district will be receiving funds in order to provide a retention bonus. The district has, or the division has, some latitude as how the bonuses are distributed, but the state is sending funds which would allow for a 1% retention bonus. It does require a match by the school division, and it does not cover positions that are not covered by standards of quality. So standards of quality doesn't cover all of our positions, but there is money coming to us for that. There's another $10 million for teacher incentive bonuses for hard-to-staff schools. I would think that we might be eligible for that, for some of that, but the Department of Ed has not indicated just exactly how that's going to be implemented. So that's kind of a question mark for us. And then there's a $20 million for the public-private pilot program for some preschool programs that are not, Norfolk is not a part of, so it's a healthy amount, but it's not for us. $17 million for reading specialists for grades 4 and 5, and $7 million for math specialists. I think some of these positions we already have in place, so we will be receiving funds to allow us to offset some of the cost. You see some plus signs in there. That means those items affect Norfolk schools. And that chart and this chart are thanks to a fellow named Jim Regenball, so it's not my work, and I appreciate his his information. This chart is provides it's a graph of state funding of K-12 from 2009 until 2024. Strain my eyes, I can see. You can see the blue bars. That is the actual amount of revenue or funds that the state spends for K-12. You can see that spending in 2009 was, I believe, around 55,274, if I can read that. For fiscal 24, you can see it's much greater. Those amounts have not been adjusted for inflation. You can see in fiscal 23 there's a blip, and that's because the state provided a one-time payments or grants for school construction. That was only in the fiscal 23 budget, and it was not in fiscal 24. So the spending or the state's budget for K-12 is going down in fiscal 24 slightly. The red bars on the graph are the deflated amount. So it's the amount actually appropriated for K-12 with a negative adjustment for inflation. So because a dollar buys less today than it did 12 years ago or 13 years ago, the actual real spending is just slightly above where it was in 2009. The good news is it is slightly above where it was in 2009 because following the recession in 2009 and 10, the state's contributions did dip considerably, and you can see the drop in the lines there. So the story here is state funding of K-12 has slowly increased, but it's just barely above where it was in 2009. Now, state funding for Norfolk schools, our portion of the 275. We have increase in state funding that totals about $13 million, which is 5.75%. That would be higher, except we're expecting to have fewer students next year than we had planned for this year. So our enrollment is scheduled to go down 252 students. With funding at about $7,400 per child, that's $1.86 million. We do have increases, or the governor has recommended increases in English learner program, and also payments for basic aid are also up. State funding of staff pay raises adds $7.2 million in next year's budget. If you'll recall, the current budget includes a 10% teacher raise for teachers spread over 2 years. The first 5% was in fiscal 23, and then there's 5% added to it in fiscal 24. There is a slight drop in sales tax revenue, and you might say, you just told me there was an increase in sales taxes. Our sales tax will go down a little bit because the Assembly last year reduced the taxes on groceries. So the state grocery tax was eliminated. That's good for consumers. The good thing for us and also for the city is the state has not, and the governor has not recommended eliminating the grocery tax the locality puts in place. So there's a 1% grocery tax which will remain in place. And I say lucky for us because we share in the city's revenue. There is a increase in supplemental sales tax, a hold harmless provision that increases by $3.5 million. That's the amount of money we get because of the reduction in the grocery taxes. The state is holding us harmless, at least so far, and that provision goes up as the sales tax number dipped. The state budget maintains funding of our early reading program, our math and reading specialists, and at-risk initiatives at $19.6 million. So that's at approximately the same level it is in the current year. The retention bonus for staff hired in fiscal '23, and I think this should actually, the term the state used is hired in fiscal '23, but I believe the way the money's coming out, it's anybody that was actually on staff. So we are slated to receive $1.1 million for that bonus. And then there's an additional $1.1 million for Norfolk for math specialists. And again, no funding for school construction. We received, I believe it was right at $7 million in school construction money this past year. So nothing, I want to say this past, during the current year, but nothing for next year. Now, that's the state budget. So I'm going to shift gears and talk about the city's funding. As most of you, or I think practically all of you know, we have a revenue sharing arrangement with the city of Norfolk, and it's in the form of a policy of the council. So this is written in the council's policy. It was adopted in May of 2018. The policy governs the amount of money of city funds that are made available to Norfolk schools. Under the policy, we get 29.55%, or just under 30% of the non-dedicated local taxes. And you see the list there. Real estate and personal property taxes are the two biggest portions. There are sales and utility taxes also, and business licenses, and some really smaller ones. So we get just under 30% of whatever's collected. Under the policy, Norfolk receives estimates of the funds that will be available in these categories for the upcoming year. The policy says we'll get notified in September with revisions in February and March. There's some turnover in the budget office, so I think they're a little behind, but we do have the first estimate, and their budget recommendations to you next month or next week will be based on that. The city staff communicates revenue shortfalls. If there are some, they are to let us know in advance, because if there is a shortfall in revenue, we could see our funding drop a bit. So this is a double-edged sword. When things are rosy and working well, we get more money, and when they don't go so well, we need to save it. There is a true-up based on the actual revenue, so either we owe them or they owe us. And then Norfolk Public Schools is permitted to retain what's called a reversion funds. If we have money left in our budget, we don't spend all of our funds. Under state law, it reverts back to the city. Under the council's revenue allocation policy, it will stay with the school district. You have to ask for it, and they will make it available. The policy says it's available for one-time uses, not for recurring expenses. And under the policy, you can ask for an increase in the tax rate. I'm not sure exactly, I don't recall exactly how that works, but you have to ask for it and support it. So far, there have been no tax increases. And lastly, I hasten to add, the policy, this is a council policy, and they can revise it at their pleasure. So, the city revenue sharing for fiscal, this is a history of the revenue that we get from the city. The first couple of years are before the revenue allocation policy actually went into effect. It was adopted in 2018, but it didn't become effective until 2022 fiscal. So in fiscal 2019 to 20, the original estimate from the city was 126 million, and the final budget was a little smaller, so 124.7. So sometimes it goes down. In fiscal 21, they initially estimated 129 million, and it came in at 129.1, so very close to the initial estimate. Fiscal 22, the original estimate was 129.6, as was the final budget. However, that's the true-up kicked in fiscal 22. They took in, our share of what they took in was 136.7 million, so we have about $7 million. The city collected about $7 million more than was put in their budget. So that falls into the revenue sharing formula and would be made available for one-time uses. The current budget, fiscal '23, the initial estimate was 134.6. Their revision and final budget was 139.7. Next year, fiscal '24, the estimate that they provided to us is 147.6 million. So you can see an improvement of about $8 million there. So going into next year, we have additional funds from the state and from the city, and Dr. Birdsong will present recommendations next week on that. The things underlying the city, or the revenue sources that underlie the city's revenue sharing formula, are shown here. The biggest one by far, it's kind of the monster in the room, is real estate taxes. That's the city's biggest source of revenue, so it's the biggest number on the chart by far. The next largest, personal property taxes, and then you see the other ones are smaller, business taxes and consumption taxes from the rest. So for fiscal '22, the total shared revenue was $462 million. It rose by 2.3% in fiscal '23 to $473 million, and next year is just right under $500 million. So again, our share is about just under 30%. As far as the school board budget, it's on the agenda for next week. This month, Dr. Birdsong and our team has finished putting the budget together, and we're polishing it even. Somebody's polishing it even as we speak. February 1st, next week, Dr. Birdsong will present the recommendations to you. On the 1st of March, there is scheduled a budget work session along with a public hearing to gain citizen input. At your regular business section in March, on the 15th, you would approve or would actually adopt a budget or approve the proposal with or without amendments. On April 1st, that's a statutory deadline to get your budget over to the city. It goes to the city manager, and he will then present recommendations to city council. Council acts in May. They will hear citizen comment. They will make appropriations, including those for the school budget and the school capital budget. And if there are differences between the budget Dr. Birdsong presents next week and what finally shakes out, because remember, we're kind of early. The General Assembly hasn't taken action, so the state budget could be a little different. And we don't have final estimates from the city. We have preliminary estimates, and that's what we're using. So those numbers could change a little bit. If that does happen, the council appropriation may differ from the budget that's presented by Dr. Birdsong, and then you will need to reconcile. We will make recommendations to you on that. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I will be glad to try to help.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
Well, not so much questions, just a couple of comments and thoughts. One, I just wanted to say, in terms of the funding formula, it's something that the school board and the council worked on together, and part of the rationale behind it was prior to the funding formula, the school board and the administration often couldn't get any clarity early in the process of having an idea of how much the council may allocate to schools. And so it always made the process kind of tricky. And so we developed the funding formula so that we could have some type of knowledge and early on consistency in the process. And I think it's worked well, both in terms of getting the school system an idea of what may come, and then also, as you've seen, I think it has resulted, at least for now, in increases. The provision about the voting on a tax increase is if the school board decided in the budget that we submit to council that we want more than what the funding formula allocates, what was placed into the resolution was then that the school board would have to vote on a recommendation for a tax increase in order to achieve what we felt our needs were, and then that action would accompany our request to council for the increase. For the board and for Dr. Birdsong, I'd like for us to, as maybe perhaps as part of the discussion next week, to look at modifying the budget calendar. So based upon the slide that we have, we would receive the superintendent's proposed budget on February 1st, which will be part of our work session, which also includes the 4-hour, currently I guess scheduled 4-hour governance training. On the 15th at our business meeting, I would recommend that we do the public hearing on citizens' input. That public hearing is for citizens' input on the superintendent's proposed budget to the board. So if we have the public hearing prior to our currently first scheduled work session, it gives the board and the administration the opportunity to hear from the public, stakeholders and so forth on the proposed budget, and then that provides us with input into our deliberations. I also think that we should consider perhaps even on that 15th, depending upon what we receive on the 1st, be flexible enough to perhaps have a budget workshop. I just think that because this year, we have the strategic plan, we have so many other things happening, that we should build in time in our calendar so that we don't go a full month between receiving the superintendent's proposal and the board discussing it at a work session at the same time of hearing the citizens' input. And then rather than having the board's action on the 15th, which would be, we could potentially have a meeting on the, I don't know all the calendars, but 22nd or 29th for us to take action. So we build in adequate time for board consideration and deliberation on our budget. Because ultimately at that time, once the superintendent gives us the proposal on February 1st, from that point forward, it becomes the board's budget. And I think the board needs to make sure, once we see that we've built in adequate time to do our work based upon all that we've been discussing over the last several months. So I'm not asking for any action on that. I just don't want anybody to be blindsided by it. But those are my thoughts in terms of how we can be more deliberate in making sure that in our role as board members that we can provide for meaningful citizens' input in a timely fashion, and then meaningful full board discussion around what we can do to drive the goals and outcomes that we established. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Anyone else? Dr. Gabriel?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for the presentation, giving us the big picture overview. A couple of items to note. When we do receive the details with regards to the budget that the state is going to, I guess, decide upon to give Norfolk Public Schools, there were a couple of items in there that you mentioned about the math specialist, the reading specialist, and some other programs. Would it be possible to delineate how much that compares to what we're already funding in our current budget for them? Would it be possible to just get that information? Because I believe that Norfolk has really prioritized our math and reading specialists. We, in fact, went to the city to help fund those positions. And we all know that once you start funding these positions and you see the growth and the rate of the students, when you take away the funds for it, we have to put those funds back in some way, shape, or form. And so it would be helpful to see what we are already funding at this time for our math and reading specialist and how that compares what the state is proposing to fund us. Because I'm assuming that that is going to be shared through the entire Commonwealth and not just for the city of Norfolk.
We should be able to provide
Okay.
information of that sort.
And again, I'll just say, as far as the bonuses, which we have been in full support of for all of our staff. And when I say all of our staff, that means the staff in addition to the SOQ funded positions. And so when those SOQ funded positions, which means the specific positions delineated by the state government, not the ones that Norfolk Public Schools funds above and beyond, because we recognize what the needs of the students are, we come in and figure out, well, Dr. Birdsong and her team figures out where we can help, so that way the funds are distributed so that everyone can receive, because everyone is participating in the success of the students. So while it might seem like it's the state is awarding a fair amount, which it is, there are still lots of places where the city, the locality has to step in and we have to reallocate funds. When, Dr. Birdsong, when we receive the proposed budget, would it be possible also on February 1st for the board to receive the school board's budget just as a supplemental docket piece of information, not as a part of the presentation?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I remember one other question.
Yeah.
Mr. Jenkins, on the process for the, going back to the calendar, where it indicates that in January the leadership team completes budget discussions, can you just describe what the process is from the building level to the leadership team in terms of how the principals or whoever does it at the building level is able to articulate what their needs are and how that then goes to the flow in terms of what the leadership team does and then what we will receive next week?
I would say this year there was a two-pronged approach. We did actually speak directly with school principals, so we did get input from principals in that manner. Principals also submit their requests through their executive directors, so a lot of it is coming through the executive directors to the budget team. Those are all assembled by the budget staff and then reviewed by the leadership team as far as prioritizing and forming the recommendations that are presented to you.
So just for clarity, each building has the opportunity to submit their needs and what they would do with the resources if they achieve them, and then that flows up to the leadership team, and then you all prioritize and then work with the superintendent in terms of what you provide to us.
Would be done primarily through the executive directors, but we did actually meet with principals as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Dr. Martin, I have my hand up too. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
of course.
I had a couple of questions, but before we do, I wanted to support both my colleagues' requests, Dr. Gabriel and Mr. Jordan, and specifically about the calendar, the budget calendar. I do wholeheartedly agree with what Mr. Jordan said and would support, especially having the citizen comment prior to the work session for March 1st. I think it's important to hear from individuals to help inform our decision-making process. And of course, having additional days to be able to deliberate and have student-centered discussions around aligning our budget with strategic plan and being sure we're aligned with our board priorities and goals. So I just wanted to express that. A couple of questions around the governor's budget. If you have, and this might be something that we might be able to get more clarification on and discuss further next week or in the coming weeks. But how the governor is defining hard to staff, how the governor is defining underperforming. And I think those definitions are going to be important for us to understand, because how we define it, how the state defines it, not just those two definitions. I'm pulling those two out because those are in the slides above, but that have been provided to us. But I think we also, those kinds of definitions, I think we have to all clearly understand and be on the same page about what that means. And so I think as a board, we have to be clear about that. So you might, I don't want to put you on the spot right now.
At this
but-
point, we don't have definitions, and
Okay.
those funds are actually in the Department of Education's budget.
Okay.
So I expect they'll be distributed to localities, to local school divisions through a grant process.
Okay. And additionally, I imagine that this $275 million to state funding, which you said I know doesn't all come to us, but that funding will also include mental health supports, behavioral health supports as well. That hasn't been
I didn't
fully.
see anything new from the governor on that.
You haven't seen anything new?
I don't believe.
Okay, well, that was
We can
my
go back.
question.
I don't,
Okay.
that's not on the list. I don't recall it in information from the Department of Ed.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. Okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone
Oh.
else? All right, thank you very much,
Thanks.
Mr. Jenkins.
I
Okay,
thought he was too, yeah.
now we have item 6.03. This is the discussion around adding the human resources vacancy reports to be included on our February 1st, so next Wednesday's work session for discussion. Can I get a motion to?
Well, we already made a motion.
Sorry, we did. I don't know. Think back. Okay. Any discussion about it?
Well, the discussion is, so we receive the HR reports, Friday evening, and we receive them every month, which I'm so appreciative of receiving those. But an opportunity, what I'm asking for is an opportunity to create space to have some discussion around recruitment strategies, getting an update on recruitment strategies, teacher retention, and how we might align, as part of our budget discussion as well. But wanting to have focused discussion on, again, tying into our hard-to-staff schools, schools with lower fill rates, where we're having a harder time finding substitutes, long-term subs. What strategies are currently in place, what is working, what isn't working, what can the board do to better support, better align resources, all of the things that we say we're going to do in our strategic plan. So I want us to be able to kind of get a gauge on where we are and have some board discussion around that. And I think I might have heard earlier that I believe Ms. Campson might have started to ask some questions around it, but that we might be having a discussion on it coming soon. And I don't know if Dr. Birdsong has the date on that. I don't know. But if not, I think if we could have, I'd like to ask for it to be discussed on February 1st. I saw strategic plan was on the agenda, on the draft agenda, and I don't know what's currently planned for strategic plan. So if I could get some clarity on what the topic is for that particular agenda topic, that would be helpful.
I'm happy to.
Items, yeah.
Yeah. And so every month, every work session, in accordance with the plan that we provided to the board, I believe it was in September, related to our strategic plan and reports that we would data and reports that we would be prepared to share with the board. We have upcoming, I know, information related to, I believe, PSAT, our graduates in terms of their employment status, if they're going to college, data around that. And there was one other area that slips my mind right now. Yes, our assessment, our kindergarten assessment, the data around that. So we are definitely prepared to have that discussion with the board on the 1st as scheduled.
Okay, so that's the topic for February 1st. Okay.
Yes, as it relates to the strategic plan.
Okay.
So, but we do need, according to, what our normal practices, to get a consensus on whether everyone agrees to have that on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to hear thoughts on if anyone else, I mean, I feel a sense of urgency to have discussion around, staffing in our schools. And that's why I'm bringing this forward. So, I wanted to bring it up forward to the whole board for some input on how we might prioritize it. So,
I agree with that. We're going to find ourselves here every year, this time of year, about recruitment, retention. We're eventually talking about contracts and trying to look at our faculty and staff base and try to forecast what it looks like in July and prepare for that. So I see this being a topic forecasting moving forward every year. At this time, we should be having some kind of HR conversation about our staffing and what are we doing specifically in Norfolk to retain and attract the best to work here in our school division. So, just moving forward, this conversation we should have annually, and look forward to doing that, because we do have to be proactive instead of reactive when we're talking about hiring the best for our school division. So I see forecasting this for a conversation every year at this time. So
thank you, Mrs. Buffalo. Go ahead, Dr. Birdsong.
So I'll add that Dr. Martin and I did have a conversation about the NPS plan for recruitment and retention, and I've already shared expectations with Mr. Billups around that, so we were ready to go for February 1 discussion around that.
Oh.
Madam.
Any comments down here? I just don't want to overlook you. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just to add to that, I support the recommendation. I also I believe that as part of the budget proposal that Dr. Birdsong and the team are considering these things, because that's the objectives as it exists under the strategic plan.
Yes.
But what I would encourage for us to consider, maybe asking the Valbin group if we can have a 2-hour governance training on the 1st, because it sounds like there's a lot of other work that we have to do in addition to the governance training. And so that may provide an opportunity for us to get done within the rest of the time, allow Dr. Birdsong adequate time to give her presentation and whatever conversation may occur from that, in addition to the other items that we have on the agenda. And then that would allow, because right now we spend 6.5 hours at a work session, 4 of it goes to the training. And since we're in budget season, if this possible for the Valburn group to give us a 2-hour session, then we could spend the rest of the time for these items that we have on the February 1st agenda, if that works for them and for us.
I was going to make a comment around that. So I agree with you, Mr. Jordan. We would just have to look at the contract. Likely, we would just end up paying for 4 hours as agreed upon, as I recall, that we've already made that agreement. So I'm sure she doesn't mind being paid for 4 hours for 2. But we would, of course, out of courtesy to her, let her know what the plans are in advance.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Gabriel, and then we'll.
So this is a conversation that has been ongoing for a very long time, and I know that Dr. Birdsong and her team has been working day in and day out as to what they could do to think out of the box in order to recruit and retain employees. They've come up with ideas of creating their own specialist within the building, the Grow Your Own programs, which have been highly successful, where they can add stipends for extra duty. They've done that, where they've been able to work with the calendar to provide days off. I heard a lot of good feedback about the day off for Wednesday for Thanksgiving. So this is a concern for all board members, and rightfully so, a topic that the board is highly vigilant on as we receive the reports every month. So highly vigilant that it is one of the biggest points that we brought up in our strategic plan. In fact, we've changed some of the goals so that it says to recruit and retain, and then we input in there competitive wages. So that way our staff knows not only do we care about them from a warm and fuzzy perspective, but we want to show it to them in their paychecks, because that's what they're doing. They're earning a living in this career, in their profession. From a board's perspective, Dr. Birdsong, you're the CEO of our division. The board needs to know what can we add value to what you're recommending to us, what you're bringing back to us from all the feedback that has trickled from teachers to principals to administrators to us. And so as a board, we need to support you hand in hand. And if that means going to City Council, as Mr. Jordan says, to ask for what we truly need in order to advance the division forward to fulfill the goals of the strategic plan, we're ready to do so. So I just want this to be value added and not necessarily, a rehash of the things that you're already doing, because we get those reports. A lot of it might be what can we allow teachers to do in order to just teach. Let them do what they're trained to do. And if we need to make those difficult decisions, you let us know, and we're going to be here to support you with that.
Yeah, I think that you summarized what we've been talking about for a while now, and what Ms. Bassine has been bringing up time and time again. How do we build on what we're already doing?
Yep.
Because
yeah, and I think Dr.
we've been
Gabriel,
listening to our teachers.
right. And this is, I think, to Dr. Gabriel's point, this is to say, thinking outside the box and to show the administration that we got their backs, that if you're going to do something bold, we got your back. But let's do. But let's. But what I'm saying is, let's do something bold and let's do something courageous. Yeah. But we got your back. But let's have that discussion.
All right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
All right. With that,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Good one.
Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Campson.
If we're telling our teachers that we have their back, then we need to show it.
Yes.
Our teachers are not feeling that.
Let's have that discussion.
Okay, so any opposition to having this topic added to the February 1st agenda?
I thought it was already on the agenda.
No, that's what this discussion was about, adding it to the agenda. I just gave Dr. Birdsong a heads up that this would be happening because, of course, I spoke with each and one of you, so we had that discussion. But to formally follow our process of coming up with a consensus, I just want to make sure that no one's, everyone's on board. Good? Any opposition? No? Okay, great. We'll be adding this topic to our work session agenda for February 1st, next Wednesday. All right, thank you, everyone. Up next, we have our citizens' comments on non-agenda items. Ms. Tanner?
Yes, we have 10 speakers for this evening. The first one is Alexis Washington, followed by Jillian Brown. And we asked them to check their names, but a lot of times people don't follow that. So these two individuals didn't check their names. But if you're here, please come forward. Alexis Washington? No? Okay, what about Jillian Brown? Okay, come forward, Jillian Brown. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yes,
please.
to the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
My name is Jillian Brown, and I'm a special education teacher at Crossroads School. Last year, I brought concerns to the principal regarding a teacher, Teacher A, who spent the majority of the school year trying to discredit me, even though she and I had never worked together. She constantly complained that I was not doing my job, even though she knew that I was not assigned to work with any of her students. Although these issues went unresolved, I was paired with Teacher A this school year. By the second or third week of September, Teacher A began complaining again that I was not doing my job. She ensured that I had no authority in her classroom by telling her students that I'm nothing but her assistant, and she intentionally and maliciously lessened my authority in their eyes. Suddenly, I was relegated to the position of the help, and teacher A granted the tutor in her classroom all of the authority of a classroom teacher. Teacher A knowingly spread false rumors about me that continue to influence how I am perceived and treated by others. Consequently, it is extremely difficult to see my time at Crossroads in a positive light when faced with the totality of Teacher A's invidious conduct. Although there are additional concerns, there are two glaring issues that I will briefly mention. In September or October 2022, Teacher A complained about me to a parent whose child is on my caseload. The parent is also a teacher at Crossroads, Teacher B. Teacher B went to another employee and made a comment that all Teacher A wants is for me to do my job. At some point, Teacher B communicated this and additional comments about me to another teacher, Teacher C, who then spread the malicious rumor to others at Crossroads. On December 9th, Teacher A sent 3 students to the main office to make false claims to the principal that I was talking about her to her students. 2 of the students said that they told Teacher A that I wasn't talking about her, but she forced them to go to the main office and make the untrue statements anyway. Teacher A is abusing her authority and manipulating her students to behave in a way that contravenes the policies on employee and student conduct. The inaction of the principal allowed Teacher A's conduct to go unchecked, and it is that inaction that empowered Teacher A to continue her offensive and harassing behavior towards me. My concerns have been used to threaten the continuation of my contract, and I have been penalized while Teacher A's behavior was and continues to be legitimized. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next, we have Melissa Garman, followed by Linda Taylor. Is Linda Taylor here?
Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Birdsong and school board members. My name is Linda Taylor, and I work at LTS. I'm in the SPED department, and I am a paraprofessional and has been in the system since 1994 to the present. I'm also an AFT member. I am here this evening due to the gun violence. It has happened in our backyard, so to speak. Newport News. At an elementary school, a 6-year-old with a gun that he took from his mom's home and his home. And that was 2 to 2.5 weeks ago. And that was Rich Neck Elementary, where he also shot his teacher. My question is, will our district schools have resource officers as before? Will our schools have daily screenings when students come in the building from their buses? Will the school board agree to go back to clear backpacks? Because right now, our lockers are not being used for books, not being used to put backpacks in them. They're housed in our classrooms. And when you have a full class, even though we try to social distance, it's hard to get around backpacks when you're walking, instructing, or checking on a student to make sure that student is on task. So yet, no one knows when and if a gun or a knife will come into our schools if it's not being checked. Also, NPS teachers and staff, classified, and parents need the assurance that our safety and the safety of our students is secured. Lastly, how often does the metal detectors and wands are being used? At my school, our detector's sitting by the door, just sitting. I've not heard it go off. I've not seen it pulled in front as the children get off the bus, one by one go through it. I've not seen that in a minute, nor the scanners. Or the wand that they go around the classrooms and check students in backpacks. I'm not seeing a lot of what's to go on, but as classified in teachers and parents and students, we are in fear and we need to have a surety. What can we have, such as town hall meetings where parents, teachers, paras, classified, we could all get together because our safety is in jeopardy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Helen McDaniel, followed by Melissa Jones.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Helen McDaniel, a second grade teacher in Norfolk. I have been in Norfolk for 6 years. I'm a member of Norfolk's Federation of Teachers. I'm here tonight to give you an insight in a day in my classroom. I have one student whose behavior is uncontrollable. He will yell out while I am trying to teach. He will take things from other students and tell them it is his. He also likes to hit one particular child in my class. Some weeks he hits him daily. I do write referrals when this happens. I have also tried to seat them with barriers between the two to keep my student from being hit. My student has no problem running out of the classroom. When he leaves the classroom, he will run down the hall and knock on other teachers' doors. This disturbs their classes. I was told in late October not to use the emergency button. I was told to call the office when he left the room. My telephone is in the back of the classroom. I emailed the administration in early December to ask what to do when the child left my room, since I could no longer use the emergency button. I called the office when he left, and no one answered. I was trying to find out the standard operating procedure. I did not get a response. I emailed again this month when he left my classroom and was told that the student was ultimately my responsibility. So, when he leaves the room, my other students must stop their work. They must get up and go with me to follow that one student around the building. Who is caring about their education? A tutor was placed in my classroom. After a week and a half, she stated that my classroom was being held hostage by this one student. I also feel that the administration team is doing what they have been directed to do from downtown. All students should be able to attend school free of harassment. They should not fear that they will be hit at any time. They should be able to get an education without all of the behaviors that are happening in my classroom. Thank you for letting me speak. I do not want to become the next statistic.
Thank you.
The Jones, followed by Thomas Calhoun.
My name is Melissa Jones. I'm a teacher with Norfolk Public Schools. I've been teaching for 15 years. I have 18 students in my first grade classroom, and I will fight for them, and I am here for them. I feel like I'm aboard the Titanic, and we have hit the iceberg, and it is going down. And what are you doing? Are you still dining and dancing because you're unaware? Some people are just trying to save themselves. I don't blame them. They're close to retiring. They're trying to use up all those sick days, because that $25 a day that they're going to get when they retired just doesn't cut it for them. They are actively seeking other employment. And then there's those of us that are trying to save the children. But I cannot continue to wear all the hats that I wear in my classroom. I cannot continue to wear the parent hat, which we all know as teachers. We wear that hat every single day. Today I wore the nurse's hat because she had to leave early, and I have 2 diabetic children in my classroom who require insulin. This month so far I've worn the substitute hat for 9 times. Since November, I've worn the special education teacher hat in my classroom because I've been without one. Some days I wear the custodian hat also, because if one of them is out, I have to sweep my floors. Well, I don't have to, but if I want my floors to get clean and I want my tables wiped off, I do it myself. I cannot continue to save the children while wearing all these hats. So I am asking you to be champions, to be heroes. All of you in this room. We need to rally the forces, all hands on deck, call to arms. We are Sparta. We need champions, we need heroes. I need everyone to step up or this ship is going down. And half of our children will go with them. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Next, we have Thomas Calhoun, followed by Laquita Mackey. And please correct me if I'm incorrect in pronouncing your name. Laquita?
Laquita.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Calhoun, past president of Norfolk Federation of Teachers. I came here tonight to try to clarify something for you all. I want to try to clarify why these speakers come down here and speak. You know, y'all can make us last, cut the cameras off, do however you want to do it. We used to be first. It's out of desperation. They don't come here to get on television. They don't come down here to embarrass people. You got a perfect example of what happened when they go through channels. It ain't like we've been telling y'all that for years. What happened, they talk to the principal, talk at school, they get called in, shut up. Don't do it, well, all of a sudden your lesson plans ain't right, whatever. Some of them get the courage, like Natalie, to call down here over the principal, Lord Jesus, help them. She told you what happened. They're not done. They're going to do something after the night. Who do they talk to? Can't talk to the principal. They call down here. They say thank you. Then they pick the phone up. They call back, tell the principal who called and everything they said. This is the way it works. And they're in more trouble. Y'all probably don't realize this, but a lot of them, when they finally get the courage to come down here and talk to you all, you know why they got it? They're going to leave at the end of the year anyway. Like over 200-something people left last year, going to leave this year. It ain't about the steps. We want them. We want the money. They deserve it. It's theirs. It's not about that. They leave because they have no one to talk to. Nobody. Every time they open their mouth, they get in more trouble. Every time. You're telling me you don't see the desperation in these people? They ain't here for glory. Y'all don't hear it in their voices? When they come here, they've been everywhere else. You don't get that. They got other things to do. You saw people stay long they could, had to go home. But they can't. They come because they have nowhere else to go. Everybody else they talk to, they get in trouble. And you telling me y'all don't see that? I don't understand why. They don't have anywhere else to go when they get here and when they leave. Thank you.
Laquita Mackey, followed by Swanzetta Lean.
Good evening.
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Birdsong, Madam Chair, Adele Martin, rest of the school board members, staff, community partners, parents, and friends. My name is Laquita Mackey. I have 29 years with only Norfolk Public Schools. I served as a third grade teacher for 14 years at Suburban Park and 15 years as a math specialist with 4 different schools. I'm currently the new president of the Norfolk Federation of Teachers, in which I am most humbled and honored for the opportunity. As I'm starting my term, I'm making a point to visit schools to learn the needs and concerns of our members. It has been brought to my attention that there are many of our students, especially in 7th and 8th grade, that are still without Chromebooks. This Friday, January 27th, will be the end of the second quarter. So that means our students did not have their devices for half of the year. Teachers have to sign up for mobile carts, and if they aren't the first ones to sign up, they are without the devices for that day. This is not acceptable, especially when it's mandatory for our students to spend 20 minutes a day on the program at Mentum, which is a math program. They also have to spend a certain amount of time for Lexia, which is a reading program. The students aren't meeting their required minutes, and that's a problem. I don't understand. We have $113 million, American Rescue Plan money. Can someone explain to us why we haven't used that money to provide our students with what they need to help them to be successful? I will say that I had the privilege to meet with the chiefs and of the district, and I was told that the students would have them this month. Well, time is winding down and schools are still without them. It's a problem. Teachers are stressed because they have to meet the minutes and they're not meeting them. This district is focused on fixing buildings, creating schools, programs, but we really don't even have teachers and a full staff to put in them. We ask you to focus on the here and now. Our students need these devices. This is just not acceptable. Please make it happen. Thank you.
Swanzetta Lane.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Swanzetta Lane, and I know you guys probably don't get many in-school suspension monitors in here, but I'm one. So I deal with behaviors all day long. From the September all the way to now, the first day of school, I had students in ISS because we have so many problems at our schools, and most of it, we have safety issues. And I'm here to tell you, you're not going to hold on to staff members no matter how much money you put out, how much money you pay them, because they're afraid for their lives. We have students who aren't afraid to cuss out an adult, walk out of class, run all over the school, and with 2 security officers, they could do it because we have upstairs. By the time the security comes from upstairs dealing with that issue and run all the way to the side where our elective hallway is terrible. We had a security officer to get hurt because she was breaking up a fight. When she was gone, it took forever for somebody to come down to help out our other security officer, and mind you, about 3 or 4 more fights broke out that same day. We had a student who assisted another student with stealing a teacher's car. They felt like that was okay to do, and now he's walking around the school, not going to class, tell the teacher to F you and F this work, and will walk around that school and just, like he one of the staff members, nobody does anything. How can that teacher feel safe knowing that her car got stolen by this young man, and he can just walk around the school like he's a staff member and refuse to go to class, cuss the teacher out if you try to make him go? He won't come sit in ISS. He's not coming in there. We have students who, as soon as they do something, got students who get caught smoking in the bathroom. That student will call her parent, and he will come pick her up every time. She's not in ISS 3 minutes before she texts her parent, come pick her up, and that office is calling me within the next 2 minutes to send her to the office for dismissal. There's no consequences for anything that students do. And as long as our schools are set up that way and we don't have enough security and no SRO on that campus, we're going to continue to have those issues. We have middle school. This is a middle school that I work at. They're smoking in the bathroom, selling vapes. Vapes get taken up. I caught a student vaping in my classroom last year. I had to call security for that. If security come to get the phone, all the student has to say, "You're not getting my phone." What is security to do? Because their legs have been taken away from them. They have no wings. Wings have been clipped. Administration don't force them to give up the phone. Call a parent. Parent feel like they should have the phone. Phones should not be allowed. That's one of the issues that we have, and it's causing more security issues.
Next, we have Blake Raleigh. Blake Raleigh?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you for acknowledging that. Dr. Martin, that is the end of our speakers for this evening.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to everyone for coming out and sharing during our public comment. At this point, we have our last item on the agenda, which is our school board committee reports or task force report outs. So I'll open up the floor, so to speak, for anyone who has a report. Ms. Basine, go ahead.
Dr. Martin, I don't have a report, so to speak, but I have questions around our committee structures and,
Okay.
and what, given our new organizational structure, like what our plan is for that.
I haven't made any changes to it,
Okay.
and several people have expressed their this board have expressed their desire to stay on their committees. So if you have a change or something you want to discuss, then I'm happy to do that with you.
Okay, all right.
I need
didn't
to
realize
sit
that.
down
Okay.
and look at what those assignments are, because I don't know them exactly. I have an idea of them, but I want to make sure that they're correct.
Okay, I was
and
just
if you have any
curious if-
changes, let me know. And this, I'm saying this to everyone here. If you have any changes for committees, or if you want to stay on your committees, if you're happy on them, I'm happy to work with you either way. All right. Does anyone have a report from a committee or task force? Mr.
Dr.
Clanton?
Martin, just to notify the board, so on February 1st, the governor's school and CSAP will have their first meeting of 2023. And that's about it. Don't know
Okay,
yet.
great.
The facility team did not meet in January. We had the swearing-in ceremony, which was beautiful. Again, it will resume on February 1st.
So both those are on February 1st, right? Go ahead, Ms. Campson.
The Safe and Secure Task Force met last week for our first formal meeting, well attended by a lot of the people who do safety for a living in our city, from our sheriff's office and our police. Oh, and the police department was nice because we had just been introduced to the police, vice chief, are they what?
Deputy chief.
Deputy, thank you, deputy chief, and it was interesting to hear her movement as a woman.
First female.
Yeah, first female to be a deputy chief. But anyway, the Safe and Secure Task Force, anyone wants to send me notes or anything, let me know, because they are looking at what are our needs, and we just heard that's the kind of information we could use, some of the concerns that you have as we work through this, and we will be presenting to the board in May, so that you'll get, and then of course it goes away. It was very exciting, and we will be visiting some other schools. We were actually down at one of the precincts, I don't know what their numbers are, but that's where we met last week, and that was kind of nice too, to have that input. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Campson. Anyone else? Okay, I do have an announcement. This isn't a task force one, but it's an event that's coming up at the Slover Library on February 2nd that pertains to our schools. Mr. Robert Gaines has written a book about Andrew Heidelberg, who was part of the Norfolk 17, and February 2nd will be the 64th anniversary of the end of massive resistance by integrating our schools. And so we are having this event at Slover Library in room 650. It's the large community engagement room on the 6th floor. From 5:30 to 7:30, it's free and open to the public. Again, this is an author talk by Mr. Gaines, and the book is called Heidelberg of the Norfolk 17, and it is in the words of Andrew Heidelberg, who has now since passed on. And so we're looking for a really big turnout, and I've invited all of the leadership from Norview High School, and I've extended it to my colleagues here, and I'm extending it to the rest of the division as well, so I hope to see you then. All right, with that, we will adjourn. Thank you all for a great meeting.